Welcome to RAADcast, where science and soul converge in shaping the future of human potential. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Grill-Peterson, and together we're stepping beyond limits to explore super longevity. Produced by the Coalition for Radical Life Extension, the visionaries behind RAADfest, RAADcast is more than a podcast. It's a movement for the bold, the curious, and those who refuse to settle for anything less than the extraordinary. Together, we'll uncover the cutting-edge science, unknown strategies, and transformative practices, paving the way for a future of limitless potential. If you're ready to think bigger, dream bolder, and live longer, you're in the right place. This is RAADcast. Now let's get ready to explore the future of life itself. Hi, everyone, and welcome back here to RAADcast, where we explore the frontiers of radical longevity and the breakthroughs transforming our future. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Grill-Peterson, and today we are going to dive into all things AI, genetics, and the next evolution of human optimization with a true visionary. Our guest, Dr. Ronjon Nag, is an entrepreneur, AI pioneer, investor, and adjunct professor at Stanford School of Medicine. His work with the R42 group is accelerating innovations in biotech, computational biology, and regenerative medicine, pushing the boundaries of what is possible in health and longevity. Dr. Nag, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited too.
There's so much I want to cover, so let's see. Let's kind of wrap a pretty bow and give some context. So you've got this incredible career that precedes you. You know, you're spanning AI, machine learning, biotechnology, genetics. I want to know what first drew you into this kind of intersection of artificial intelligence and human health.
Yeah, I've actually been working in AI, I think at this point, 40 years. Literally 40. I know we
You're a
think it's
true
only
early
40.
adopter.
I think my first system was in 1983 at Birmingham University, where we were doing telephone digit recognition, just recognizing telephone digits. And I used to tell people, oh, trying to make this machine that can understand human speech. And they didn't understand what I was talking about. And they've just fall off their chair, just a little telephone digit demonstration. And I mean, I got my inspiration really from watching Star Trek.
Yes.
And of course, when I talk to people, I'm not sure which Star Trek they're thinking of. Sometimes they're thinking about the movie. I'm thinking about the TV series.
I'm
The
thinking the
first,
original one with William Shatner.
yes, exactly, exactly. And a lot of the inventions, look,
Yes.
half of them have been made now, but those days they'd not been made. And when I was doing electrical, believe it or not, I was electrical. I'm now an adjunct professor in medicine, but I started off as an electrical engineer. And said, wait, you mean we could actually do a project to do some of these things? There's
Wow.
this final year undergraduate project. Well, yeah, we're going to try. That's what my advisor said. And then we built this thing to recognize telephone digits. And then my first job was a company called Apricot, not Apple, Apricot. It's Apricot, which is a British laptop company. And they were trying to put speech recognition into a laptop. This is in 1984.
Wow.
It had like 4,000 word vocabulary, and you had to have a little space between each word. So I was getting into all this technology, and then Cambridge let me in to do a PhD in signal process machine learning, we called it in those days, but really it was AI. Again, my field was speech, understanding speech.
Yeah.
And then basically went to MIT to do AI for finance, and then came to Stanford, not the engineering department, not the computer science department, but the psychology department. A little known fact, a lot of the modern AI is based on a technique known as neural networks. These are computational models on how the neurons work. But computer science departments back in the day didn't really believe in that. They were saying, well, how do we get, because we didn't have big data,
Mhm.
they were saying, how do we get small data into a machine? And then you'd actually set up rules of why you think this person's got diabetes
Right.
and program the rules into the computer. And of course, so many problems are so much more complex. You don't know what the rules are. You have an accent, I
Correct.
have an accent. Of course, longevity, aging, we don't know. The body's so complex. And so round about the 80s, 90s, you had this new era of data. and say, well, let's collect the statistics from the data and
Mhm.
see how we can model complex problems by looking at statistical models of the data.
Mhm.
And those kind of ideas were really done in other departments, not computer science. So engineering, electrical engineering, psychology, mathematics, other departments, and then finally the computer scientists sort of came on board. So, but after Birmingham, Cambridge, MIT, Stanford, no one would give me a job. So I had to, of course, I was here in Silicon Valley. What do you do if you don't have a job in Silicon Valley? You
You go
create your
invent
own.
things.
You
That's right.
invent things. So what did I invent? The first thing was worked on cursive handwriting recognition. Now, you're probably familiar with, you may have an OCR package that converts your PDF into text, right?
Yeah.
That's a very much easier problem because there's a space around every letter and it's all typewritten and fixed. But handwriting, people are notorious in having bad handwriting. And in cursive, it's even more difficult because you don't know where one letter starts and one letter ends, and you'll do a T cross. And so these are
Yes.
complex problems. We started looking at these. And then, so I started a company called Lexicus, and at our peak, we were three people, and we sold that to Motorola. And they made me do the first thing they told me to do was we've just invented texting, and we need you to invent Chinese input systems because there's 20,000 characters and we don't know how to get them in the box. So I said, I don't speak, read, or write Chinese. And they said, oh, we don't care. We've just bought your company. We need you to invent
Figure
it.
it out. Right.
So what we did, we got a lot of Chinese handwriting, Chinese speech, and all these things, and then invented the first. Then was wanted to crowdsource intelligence. So how did it do that? So first invented the first mobile app store. This is 8 years before Apple. And said, well, instead of inventing every feature to go in the phone, let's crowdsource, let's have everybody else invent it. So I invented the first mobile app store in 1999. My only
Oh.
problem was there were no phones that could run apps. Oh, there's
Right. Right.
two phones that could run apps. But I thought, I had all these roadmaps. It's going to happen. But it took instead of taking like 20 months like the first one, it took 10 years. And then BlackBerry bought that company. And then I went back to sort of speech recognition again, and then it was more of the advisor investor, and then Apple bought that company. So one to Motorola, one to BlackBerry, one to Apple, the most arrogant phone company in each time horizon. And then they came. Now, how do I get into biology? You might ask. This is all AI stuff, all engineering and AI stuff. Well, Stanford has a program, and I think this is a societal thing that's going to happen more prolifically is we're all going to live till 100. And so universities are great educating 18-year-olds for bachelor's degrees and 21-year-olds for masters and 26-year-olds for PhDs and 27-year-olds for MBAs and 28-year-olds for MDs. But if you're going to live till 100,
Yep.
maybe you need re-educating in your 50s.
That's right.
So I got re-educated. So Stanford, there's about 10 universities in the US, and Cambridge universities are starting this year. You can actually just go back to university. Chicago has one, Harvard has one, UT Austin has one. You just go back to university. You have to have a 30-year career, and you go back. And are you going to do the same thing the next 30 years as you did the last? Possibly, maybe.
Mm.
So you could go to the computer science department, see what they're doing
Mhm.
there. Or are you going to try and do something else, do other things? So
Mhm.
in my case, I took all the medical school courses and the genomics courses and started to get to know all the professors. Then I started, well, getting good enough to actually teach some of it. I teach longevity science at Stanford. I teach AI, genes, and ethics. And I also teach venture capital at Stanford University in the medical school, not the business school or the engineering department, but the medical school. And those to the regular students, but also I'm very egalitarian. I was brought up in Europe where we didn't have to pay for education, and so I don't really believe I really like to expound my ideas to anyone who will listen to them and explain how things work if I know how they work. And so people can actually take my courses in the evenings. These are Stanford's cheapest courses. They're like $500. And so I teach AI. There's an AI course I've taught 40 times uh,
Wow.
evening, and anyone can take. You don't need to I don't have to pass a test or do SATs to take that course. And so I also teach a longevity science course also in the
Mhm.
evenings. in addition to the regular students at Stanford. So I really like imparting, and it's not for altruistic reasons. The students give me ideas, right?
Yeah.
So these topics, aging science, longevity science, the first thing I say is I actually don't know the answer. I don't
Mm.
know all the answers. But if you have a classroom or a group of people where everybody's from different specialisms, well, maybe
Yeah.
collectively we know the answer. Maybe together we can come up with the answer on each topic. And the field, no, medicine's a very, very wide field.
Hmm.
And so, really, how do we move the ball forward? And so, the second way to move the ball forward is put your money where your mouth is, right? And so, I've been investing for about 25 years. I've got about 100 companies, part owner of, and so, well, let's just professionalize that instead of me just doing it by myself. So, I really started R42, which is a venture firm and an institute. So, I have a separate institute to
Okay.
my activities, where again, I like to teach for free. And so, the R42 Institute, we have seminars and programs. We have a summer institute where we teach AI for free, and we put them on a longevity science project or a biotech project in the summer. And we also invest in companies. So invest in really the earliest stages when it's just an idea, first check, usually the only check, just to get it off the ground. And it's
Hmm.
usually hands-on. And a few companies I invest in. So that's my second persona. First persona is a teacher. Second persona is I'm a investor. And the third persona, I'm still an inventor. So I still love inventing. And I like to be on the other side of the coin and have empathy with the entrepreneurs that I work
Yeah.
with. So I feel I've got to keep my hand in. And really, I've got three companies that I've really worked on now. One is Agemica, which is
Hmm.
an aging vaccine
Hmm.
using computational techniques. Two is Ikshana, which is trying to solve dry AMD. This is age-related macular degeneration when you get like a fuzzy spot in your eye,
Hmm.
and people have that, but 80% of the people, well, have the dry form. The wet form, there is a cure, not a very comfortable cure. It's an injection in the eye every month. Not very much fun. But there's a dry form, which most people, 80% of people have that, and there's really no cure for that. And the third one is an AI life sciences app store, superbio.ai, where instead of writing code, I hate writing code. I mean, code should be like PowerPoint, and we're starting to get there now, where you just upload data and click train, and it's sort of biotech like AI libraries that you can use. And in the end, you'll just write a sentence. Like, tell me the combination drugs that will solve aging, and it'll say, oh, you need these computational models, you need these data sets, and instead of trying to hook them together manually, it will just do it for you. It's what they call
Hmm.
the agentics. They either call that the agentics framework in artificial intelligence. So that's me in a nutshell.
Wow.
What
Wow.
question? Any question on AI or aging science?
So you are the OG. You are like right there. You've been in it since the inception. You've helped to bring so many key AI developments forward over the last multiple decades. And I love your journey. I love your story. I definitely want to dive into so many elements. You have just piqued my curiosity with so many things that you've said. You're fascinating, first and foremost. I am so genuinely just honored that I get to sit and just, mentor with you over this time
Oh,
together because that's what I
it's
feel
my honor.
like for
It's
sure.
my honor. It's my honor, Melissa.
I tell you, I mean, I want to have a conversation off interview about, what you're teaching with longevity sciences because I run the Human Longevity Institute and we teach practitioners precision health and longevity medicine. And it's like, it's just, there is such a need. And I love what you're doing. I'm so curious of how you're approaching things and would love to get to bend your ear about that. And so let's first, gosh, oh my gosh. Okay, let's use it something that I think is going to first and foremost pique our listeners' audience, which you talked about the aging vaccine. So let's talk about this aging vaccine. Explain it to us for a moment. And I want to come back to some investing things, but let's help us
Sure.
to know what the aging vaccine is.
So, yes. So I'm a big believer of setting big goals, right? So you're imagining you're in 1983 and you're saying, oh, I'm going to build a machine that understands human speech. People say, what are you talking about? That's impossible. Everyone's got a different accent and it's
Yeah,
the language is so complex. People don't speak in perfect grammar. And oh, you've got just this toy problem, this telephone digits. That's fine. You can do telephone digits, but you're not going to do real language. How are you going to do 20 years later? It's on everyone's phone, like
correct.
2005. So, first of all, set the goal big. You can't, if you set the goal narrow, then you will get a narrow result.
Love it.
Right. And then people will laugh at you. They may laugh at you and say it's impossible. But time and time again, we see things that are not impossible, but they have to ask the right question. In fact, up 42, I'm not sure if you know why it's called 42, but 42 is it's a parody from a book called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by
I love
Douglas.
that. Yeah.
And the characters are looking for the secret to life, universe, and everything. And they finally find out the answer. And the answer is 42. But the only problem is they don't know what the question is. So this is no set the question, set the question, what you want to actually do. So okay, we want to, a lot of the questions are, living forever and solving aging, but let's put some science around it and say,
Yeah.
well, we have some concepts. A vaccine for aging. Okay, well, I'm an engineer. How would that work? How would that work? What does that even mean? Does that mean you just stop aging? Does that mean you reverse it? And what does that mean? Is that something you have to take every year, like a flu vaccine or something? Or
Mhm.
is it something you just take once, like smallpox, and just take it once and that's it? And what does that mean? If you take it when you're 5 years old, are you five for the rest of your life? So you ask these things, and then from an engineering point of view, okay, let's sit down. How would we do it? And as you probably know, the FDA doesn't regard aging as an actual disease, and actually, lots of people don't regard it as a disease. You can't get, even if you solve it, you won't be able to get a prescription for it. But we know that in many diseases, the only common denominator is time,
Mhm.
age. And we know the number one killer is is cardiovascular disease. Big problem, as people aging to older levels, we're seeing dementia and Alzheimer's creep in, and where previously that one didn't register because people didn't get old enough. And then, of course, cancer, which is heterogeneous, disparate. There are many types. There's not really a single cancer. There's hundreds of
Yeah.
types of cancers and subtypes of cancer. And how are we going to solve this? So I worked with my co-founder, Dr. Yasmin Kalantor Motamedi, and said, look, let's set this as our challenge. She has a PhD in computational drug discovery, so she's more on the drug side. I'm more on the AI side, and said, well, okay, the problem's obviously complicated and difficult. It's going to be difficult for us to think of it by ourselves, but how can we
Mhm.
use the tools that we now have, even just in the last couple of years have popped up? How can we use the databases that we now have that
Yeah.
didn't exist even 5 years ago, never mind 10 years ago? So it's not that people were stupid in the 1980s, 90s, 2000s. We just didn't have the tools. We all stand on the shoulders of others.
Yes.
And okay, so what we're trying to do at Agemica, which is the company that's trying to solve this, is let's break up the problem into parts.
Mhm.
Okay, trying to solve aging all at once, that's certainly a goal. And some people are looking at that, and instead of looking at one disease at a time, is there something common that affects all the diseases all at once? And there may well be, but how do we find those common things? But let's break it into a smaller problem first, just like my
Mhm.
telephone digit
Yep.
example. Instead of doing the whole of language all at once, let's
Right.
let's just recognize yes and no, two words first. Oh, then let's do 10 digits. So let's break it down in three broad categories. One is cardiovascular,
Hmm.
second is neurodegenerative,
Hmm.
third is cancer. So let's
Okay.
break it three broad problems. And let's start off with cancer because cancer is disparate, many, many different forms. Can we actually come up with technology to find common pathways to as many cancers as possible? And then I put my
Yes.
engineering hat on and I talked to my biochemist friend and says,
Hmm.
wait, you mean we're just trying to do one cancer at a time? But wait a minute, it metastasizes, right? Doesn't Isn't it like a whack-a-mole problem?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, you fix one, but it's two, no. it's gone to the brain now, or it's gone to the thyroid
Correct.
now. And well, aren't we looking at a fundamentally flawed way? Shouldn't we be looking at groups of cancer
Yes.
to attack it before it even gets there? And then can we extend that to like every
Hmm.
cancer at the same time? So can we look at the gene expressions? When we look at tumors, you can now get human tumor cells and all the different types of cancers. And let's start off with 30 cancers, right? And then break the problem down. This is classic engineers do this. Break
Hmm.
the problem down into smaller problems until you can solve it. And so we break it down and say, what are the common pathways across
Yeah.
as many diseases as possible? And that's trick one. So we use AI to do that. So trying to have a person do it using their own mind, it's too difficult. It's
Right.
trial and we now have machines that can do that for us and can read a million papers for us instead of all the articles that everyone's done. Look at all the databases. And trick two is saying, okay, how do we speed this up? Because
Yeah.
it takes 20 years and $1 billion to get a drug out.
Hmm.
Right. So I'm firmly of the thesis of, it's not a controversial thesis, but well, we've had 2,500 drugs already made, the FDA has approved, another 5,000 have gone through phase one, which is the safety phase. And for
Correct.
whatever reason, they didn't continue afterwards, but they're safe. And then there's another 10,000 by other agencies around the world. Instead of inventing a new drug, why don't we
Mhm.
start from an existing one? So that's
Yes. Yeah.
called drug repurposing. And
Yep.
so that wipes out 10 years of development time.
Hmm.
And instead of starting from fresh, no, we have companies, I have investments in companies that have the other idea. Let's start some completely new because
Hmm.
nothing exists that works. So that's one view. I say, well, let's look at the current thing. So when someone says to me, I found this chemical compound I think is going to solve whatever disease, some
Hmm.
AIDS disease. First thing I say, is there any existing drug that has a similar signature to the compound that you're thinking of,
Yes.
right, in the entire database? So we don't have to invent this new one and go through the phase one trials, go through the whole thing.
Hmm.
And so I'm skipping that stage and say,
Hmm.
okay, which ones can be used in different combinations? So if you have 10,000 possibles and you even have two combinations, that's 100 million combinations, right? And if you had
Hmm.
three triples, that's a trillion combinations. So, and can we find the right one to look at? So basically, go forward in that, and then basically, then there's a concept of a vaccine, there's a concept of a therapeutic, right? The
Hmm.
therapeutic idea is, can you fix you once you've got the disease?
Hmm.
Vaccine is the idea, can you stop you even get it in the first place? Again, simpler problem is do the therapeutic first.
The longevity revolution is about more than just searching online for a few hacks, or any one of us moving our biomarkers in the right direction. It's about coming together to learn, share, to connect, and create the unlimited future we want. That's why you need to be at RAADfest 2025 in Las Vegas from July 10th to the 13th. RAADfest, the revolution against aging and death, is proud to be partnering for the first time with Dr. Aubrey de Grey and Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation to form the single most comprehensive, advanced, informative, and inspiring event on age reversal for a general audience. Meet the people you want to make forever with. RAADfest 2025. Take advantage of lower advanced pricing now at radfest.com.
And I have a question. I'm loving this. This is absolutely fantastic. Thank you for taking us through the process. And I don't want to stop your flow, but I do question that as we're looking at the pathways, we're looking at the commonalities. You mentioned earlier about, okay, we're looking at the genetic expression. So, what part of, if at all, this computational assessment is cross-referencing and inclusive of the external inputs from the
Yeah.
exposome? So, understanding of how, right? Like, are we seeing correlative patterns that are coming up in these disease processes? That yes, they're affecting multiple pathways. There's a internal physiological cellular signature, right? What are the external parameters? Because I think ultimately that's where we continue, and I'm hopeful that AI will help with this, but I feel like that's where we continue to miss the mark. Like we'll have a molecule that yes, it's right on paper, it's right in the science, it's right in the lab, yet it's not bio-individual because it's not taking into consideration what's creating the inner terrain disturbance to begin with. So how is that being looked at and considered in this process?
Yeah, so there's a concept known as ageotypes. So some of us are lung ages, some of us are kidney ages, some of us are heart ages, because of multiple reasons. It could be our lifestyle, could be, as you say, the exposome, could be the environment we're in, things that we do that we don't not supposed to do, bad habits. It could be genetic and the like. So one view, I guess that's sort of, moving to the personalized medicine approach. There's a couple of views. You've got to balance the two approaches.
Right.
The vaccine approach is almost the opposite to personalized medicine. Does it work on everybody?
Right.
Um, and what you have to try and do is look at the causation correlation. So most things in AI, and you'll see this in the newspapers, and somebody will say, "Oh, we found the genes for the genetic framework for being a criminal," or something like that. Or I
Right,
can
right,
take a
right.
picture of your face and I'll tell you if you're going to be a criminal or not. Right. Or whether you're going to be a great podcasting host, or whether you're going to be a fighter pilot instead. Tell you just from your face. No, usually those are what known as correlations, not causations. And that's a classic issue in medicine and biochemical research, is we see correlations, and the scientists are very careful. We say this is correlated. There's something called the Bradford Hill analysis, which is about 70 years old at this point, which says, look, we just see one chart. That's not enough. You've got to look at charts in every dimension. And so your question is, how do we account for the other things that if you're living in Vermont, you've got clean air, versus living in Delhi, where you have highly unclean air, the AQ index at 400, it's going to be very different analysis,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And what we're lucky today, getting luckier, is there are now databases that are popping up. Some countries are more prolific than others. The UK in particular, where now I'm speaking from Palo Alto, California. I'm Californian and American, but I was brought up in the UK, so I have lots of links there. And the UK should be probably commended for being a bit ahead of the game in trying to collect databases. Of course, there's a single payer health system, a little bit easier. They're still fragmented actually, but they've got the sort of framework to actually collect data from the population in the easier format, and it's a ethnically diverse population at this point.
Yeah.
It's pretty good data you get from the UK Biobank out there, but you're getting other data. So that's where the government programs, where they can get thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of data points, compared with like the iPop program at Stanford, where they measure everything about me all the time, but it's only about 100 of us. Right. I have to give blood every few months. I have to give throat swabs, nose swabs. You've been sequenced. They have to give poo. But they don't tell you about the poo until after you've signed the patient consent.
Like, oh, you want to know my microbiome too? Okay, there we go.
Yes, exactly. So they can get very deep profiling on one person, right?
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to get deep profiling in scale.
Yeah.
It's starting to get a bit easy, and you've seen all these companies and labs where people are taking control by themselves.
Yeah.
And it's also on the AI side. Maybe a couple of years ago, in these GPT systems, you asked it a medical question, it just wouldn't answer. These days, I'm seeing it's answering, and it's not a bad answer. Before it was sort of, 80% there, and now the answers are not bad. And because the healthcare system is so expensive for many people, I think that's what's happening. A lot of the questions are actually wellness questions. And what's the advantage of the current AI system? They're trained on the entire internet. And so they can pick up information. Now, the problem is they're trained on the entire internet. They can pick up bad information too.
Correct. Yeah.
But a lot of these companies are putting in processes to try and filter out the bad, and that's a big chunk of their activity, is to try and filter out incorrect information. So it's a recognized issue. And so in my courses, I let my students use these AI systems to write their essays, as long as they tell me they're writing them, and as long as they filter out the mistakes. If they release mistakes created by an AI system, they get negative marks.
Nice.
So being in industrial. So answering your question is, I think we have the tools to sort of look at that. But the proof is in the pudding. The dirty secret of AI in drug discovery there's no drug that's been released yet that's been invented by AI. Nothing's
Okay.
got end of phase 3.
Are you ready to redefine aging and unlock your full potential as a longevity leader? At the Human Longevity Institute, our world-class certification programs train doctors, coaches, and wellness professionals how to deliver cutting-edge integrative longevity health solutions so people can live better today for longer, healthier, and more vibrant tomorrows. If you're ready to join the longevity revolution, visit humanlongevityinstitute.com to enroll and become a practitioner today. But I like what you're doing. I mean, I'm hearing more and more that, especially in the health span landscape, it's really looking at drug repurposing. And so you're fast tracking the potential solutions and using the beautiful computational analysis to potentially get there much faster, as you're saying. So we could, I mean, you said AI hasn't developed a drug yet, and now we have something kind of in play, but I mean, AI could definitely help us find these solutions.
I think
How
there's
quickly do you think it could happen?
Yeah, I think there's lots of phase 2, lots of drugs in phase 2 right now. And I think it could be a bit like the 4 minute mile. No, Roger Bannister ran the mile in
Mhm.
4 minutes in the 1950s, and no one had done it. Supposedly, no one had done it. I haven't really measured. I don't think people were measuring, but as soon as he did it, 20 people did it in 9 months.
Yeah.
Right. So it's impossible. So I think there's going to be next couple of years, we're going to see 1 or 2 companies get out there, and then everyone will do it. And everyone who's not doing it is going to be using it, and they'll get a head start because they're not going to have to go through all the arrows in the back of using the weak databases, the weak tools. They're going to be able to use the most advanced. So you don't necessarily get loser advantage. You see this in tech, fast followers. I guess Microsoft has always been known, even Apple, as a fast follower. As soon as the technology, let other people get arrows in the back, and then as soon
Hmm.
as it's ready, then jump. Right?
Yeah.
Microsoft and Apple are both in that category, and I think we're going to see biotechs, and a lot of us are getting painful. So starting now is not necessarily you're not necessarily losing. You can actually build on what other people have done. And so I think 10 years, which by biotech standards is short. If it's done from scratch, because you can imagine the issue is the you still have to do the trials.
Yeah.
Repurpose the trials go quicker. And it
Hmm.
depends, combinations. You can repurpose a drug if it's a single drug to something else, and the trial's going to be really quick. If you're doing combinations and you have to test the
Yes.
combination,
Yes.
it depends what you're testing. You can know almost ahead of time, depending whether it's going to be because of all these toxicity databases of how drugs interact with each other. So you know almost ahead of time whether it will work. So what's unfortunate, traditional biotech, they'll spend the 15 to 18 years and then it fails.
Yeah.
Billion
Yeah.
dollars
A
later.
lot of things fail, and I don't think enough people understand the process, the time, and then what's kind of left on the floor that just didn't fully come out,
Wow, some of the failures work. Viagra is the famous case where it didn't work for, I guess it was blood pressure, but it worked for other things.
Yeah.
And even Keytruda, is in that area. Even GLP-1 inhibitors were
Yeah.
looked for other things.
Same thing. Yeah.
Say other things. So, but the higher order bit is looking at, what something that already has been made be used for
Hmm.
something else. And I think the way we're looking at Agemica is let's cancer's got all the characteristics of multivariate problems, lots of little dimensions changing all at the same time. There's no
Hmm.
one cancer. If you can solve it for that, then you can run the
Hmm.
whole process for cardiovascular. And it gets easier as you go along, because as we know, a lot of these
Yeah.
things are correlated. If you have a good heart, often it reduces your chance of cancer and vice versa. Cancer
Yeah.
drives aging drives cancer, drives senescent cells, makes cells older, and those cells themselves make the other cells older. So I think we like cancers as something to start off with, and
That's great.
make
Yeah.
and make it a manageable problem. Oh, we failed. We didn't solve aging, but we solved cancer.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, I love it. So, okay, so where do you think you're at in your timeline with the three buckets that you guys are actively working on
Yeah,
and being?
so cancer's the furthest along. We've done tests on human cells, 30 cancers. And so we're now trying to do, again, again, thinking about engineering, what's the next milestone?
Yeah.
trying to make a cancer-proof mouse. So you can get a
Hmm.
mouse where you can replace the immune system, and you can replace telomere. Lots of things are now a mouse. You can replace them with the human equivalents. You
Yeah.
can replace the mouse immune system with the human immune system, for example.
Mm.
And so, because mice, you do experiments on mice, notoriously they never work in humans, right?
Mm.
That's because I'm not a mouse. My brain's a lot bigger, I'm a lot
Yeah.
heavier, my muscles heavier, etc.,
Yep.
etc., etc. And so it's not always the best model. The next step is to have a sort of dog trials, right? So
Mhm.
bigger. Um, and then go to the phase 1 with the combination. So we've got like 30 cancers, and the trick is anyone can come up with stuff that kills cancer cells. You can come up with
Yep.
poison and acid and stuff like that. The problem is, does it kill the normal cells too?
Right.
Yeah, and so again, we're trying to do the test so it kills the cancer cells, but not the normal cells.
Hmm.
And so that's what we've got, and we've got the AI framework to compute that whole thing. We've done actual wet lab tests, blinded, so we know we use CROs. It's not us doing it; it's another
Yeah.
organization doing it. And we are now just starting the whole thing again for cardiovascular, just running the entire thing for cardiovascular. And so, can you
Fascinating.
actually do that? And you get the program, and then we have a peptide. Again, these peptides are things where you can get to the actual protein that you want to
Hmm.
solve in the cell. And again, in the olden days, it was a chemical sort of process and trial and error, and now it's a computational process. So we've
Hmm.
turned biology into engineering. That's again the macro trend. So us computer scientists, we can like muscle into these fields and of course interact with our colleagues. And of course, the best people like Dr. Yassin, they're now coming up, these people who know both. Now, my
Yeah.
generation, we just know one area, and you have to sort of do a heavy lift to learn the other area.
Yeah.
And the students coming out today, they're taking classes in both departments and getting both areas. And we're going to get some very brilliant people coming through in the next 5, 10 years who are going to be much more able than crusty old people like me.
You're silly. But let's talk about that. And I know we've got I only get a few minutes left with you. I don't want it to rush by, but I am curious. So from your perspective, and again, you've been navigating this arc of this artificial intelligence for throughout its journey. And now, like you said, we're at a time where it's not either or. People aren't in silos anymore. They're kind of coming up and learning the languaging and the AI along with health and or other sectors simultaneously. And so let's talk about not just in the learning environment, but as humans, as we are now all having access, direct access to AI that's getting better
Yeah.
and better every day. Philosophize on what you see as being possible. Like, how is AI set to help or harm us? What do you think it's going to be able to do? And I'm being across just as humanity, right? So I'm
Yeah.
making a bit more of a global statement versus just in research and development and things like that, which is already phenomenal. But yeah, I'm just curious on your perspective.
Well, I'm an optimist, maybe because I've been Americanized now. Everything's a glass half full, versus when I was in Britain, everything was glass half empty. And of course, there are doomsday scenarios that, you'll have the Terminator, or you have a high school student who'll have the power to unleash a pathogen on the world. Bill Joy, who was the founder of Sun Microsystems, he always basically was worried about that. And it hasn't happened. Was talking about that 30 years ago. Um, but we're going to have that power. But just like we have computers that are now available to everyone, you have great things happening. You're getting this democratization.
Yeah,
It used to be you go meet your doctor. She wore the white coat and she told you what to do. And she said, "Oh, don't believe anything you read on the internet."
right.
Now she says, "Well, Ronjon, what do you think it is?" But she knows I've spent 2 hours working on looking at the internet, right? And we have 10 minutes, a 10-minute discussion with
Yeah,
your family practitioner. It's going to be a bit more collaborative. It'll be a bit more collaborative where the patient, the individual will be have done their own research maybe ahead of time with their
mhm,
discussion, and it's going to be more of a discussion with the expert.
yeah,
Who, I mean, the expert's seen 20,000 patients, which you can't get around, and they can see almost instantly. Uh,
yeah.
what's wrong with you and what isn't wrong with you. But if they can access your research that you've done already,
Yep.
and it's like, well, could it be that? Oh no, no, it's not that. You don't smoke. It could be that. No, it's not that. You're not obese, etc., etc. All these things you worry about when you're research. Then you use the person as a
Correct.
consultant, right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, could it be that? Oh, it might be that. Yeah, let's double click on that one. So I think it's going to be much more collaborative going forward.
Yes. I love it. So a much more collaborative time. Okay, so as you're looking at everything coming out, one of the things when you were giving an understanding of yourself as an educator, an investor, and an inventor, what are some of the things that you as R42 really looks at and considers investing in? What are some of
Yeah. Well, we
the
like
big
root cause.
ideas?
Yeah, we like root cause, longevity ideas. We see a lot of things that come through that are individual diseases.
Hmm.
But I really like to look at things that they cross across the spectrum, a lot of things. So we have an investment in Sinisca, for example, which is looking at RNA regulation. So the central dogma, the DNA is in every cell. DNA creates RNA, RNA creates proteins, proteins tell our cells what to do. Well, as we get older, that cycle, this RNA regulation gets weaker. So what Sinisca's do, they're trying to solve that. So that's you can have an argument, is that the right way or not? But that covers lots and lots of different things. The other one is epigenetic reprogramming. We have an investment in Turn Bio, for example. And there's four things they call the Yamanaka factors that if you turn a cell, if you change them, the cell goes from its current age to a zero age, which shouldn't surprise anyone. When you get a 30-year-old female and a 30-year-old male, you get this creature, it's called a baby. It's a zero. Why can't we do that for ourselves? We can create cells and other creatures, but why can't we do that for ourselves? So again, it's cuts across the elements. I mean, there are other different, and then we sort of look at inflection points. We have some gene editing companies, for example, which I mean, the dirty secret of gene editing, really, we can only edit one gene. So a lot of the success cases are these monogenic diseases, sickle cell anemia, which only one gene, you fix it, the whole disease goes away. But most diseases, not well, I say not, lots of diseases a multi-gene, a long tail of genes. So you can't
Yeah.
one gene's not going to fix it. So we need the second generation gene editing companies to come through. And then there's finally science acceleration, right? So SuperBio.ai is in that area. So how can we accelerate science by 50x, right? By
Yeah.
all the models, the AI. So it's just drag and drop instead of trying to, and then computational models, you just heard of this AI system from China that was 50 times faster. But how can we do that across in the AI life
Yeah.
sciences journey? So those are
So as
kind of
all of this starts to drop in and it is just adopted as a normal way that we are creating, living, being human, running research labs, it's just everywhere in humanity. What do you see as possible in health span, lifespan extension? Like what do you think will become the new norm as far as how long we're living, how well we're living?
So in the US, the average age of death for males is 76, which has actually dropped from 78, and I think that was the opioid crisis. My prediction in the next few years, it's slowly going to increase. I think GLP-1 will actually increase the age naturally across the population. The keyword being average, those of you as statisticians listening, because there's more people hitting the age of 100 than ever before. So even though the average has dropped, more people are hitting the age of 100. Unfortunately, you're seeing it bi-coastal, East Coast, West Coast. If you go in the Midwest, it's not as strong, that effect. So certainly getting to 100, I think if you behave yourself, there's much more education. There are new treatment ideas. GLP-1 is going to be a big push. There's going to be more chance of getting to 100. I mean, the Boston Marathon, which I ran, I'm bragging, I ran last year, but in 1970, only 1,000 people ran it. Women were not allowed to run it, too dangerous. Now 40,000 people run it regularly every year. Now, we're not really
Yeah.
seeing what that generation is going to happen in the next 20, 30 years, where people are these extreme athletes are not limited to professional athletes, they're limited to the amateurs are getting to the same level. But the issue is, if you look at many biological phenomena, they tend to terminate like 115. If you last that long, you don't get hit by a car and you behave yourself, even if you keep going, no one's got past 122. The oldest living people is 116 now. She lives in Brazil. A couple of people died last year. They got to 116. Like telomeres, these things at the ends of your chromosomes, they get smaller and smaller. If you plot it out, it seems to end around 115 or so, which maps exactly to how the eventual age. So you're going to need some of these more radical ideas, epigenetic reprogramming, gene editing, to get
Yeah.
past that 115 barrier, even just getting to 115, the probability is going to increase. So I think there'll be some quantum jumps in the next 10, 15 years just by GLP-1, which is not even an aging drug. It's just
Right.
really getting
It's one of
people.
my favorites. I teach on peptides every day. I have Peptide University, and I love teaching about microdosing of GLP-1s and all the different applications. And there are some amazing longevity benefits just with that and multiple benefits through the system. So it is exciting that we're in this really rapidly evolving time where information is being able to be give us insight of how things can be applied and we can get new results, right? Kind of know better, do better type of thing. So I love it. And so let me ask you, what is your personal longevity vision? So how long, how well, like what does your longevity vision for your life look like?
Yeah, so that's now my life. So it's not just an interest case, put $50 million into it from the venture fund already and teach it and research in it and start inventing in the space. So it's not just looking afar. I'm jumping really into the space. And I
Yeah.
think if you do jump into the space, you'll probably figure out no, no, whether we're clever enough to invest in it is another question. But we'll probably see anything that will that will work. We'll probably see it 10, 15 years before it hits mainstream. And so that's why I think now that's available to everybody, though, at this point. This white coat thing is now just moving away. You've got access to something called the web now, and there's something called
Yeah.
GPT. And I personally, if you ask me, what do I actually do? I'm a runner. So I think running is the most if you can run, it's probably the most efficient way to get the heart rate up, to lose weight, you get lots of mechanical benefits in your body as long as you don't get injured. So as you get older, you get higher risk of injury risk. So you have to sort of take a few steps of longer recovery times. And so that's my main thing. On the supplement side, I've tried most supplements. They might work, but I don't notice any different. Well, maybe I don't get cancer 20 years from now, but
Yeah.
I like things that show an immediate benefit. And the only thing I've found is slow release alpha lipoic acid, seems to make me less hungry, and rotary acidophilus pearls, which
Mm.
would be too much information, but it still comes out like it's supposed to within a couple of days. And then zinc occasionally, if you catch a cold, if you feel the hint of a cold, zinc
Mhm.
seems to solve it, very, very quickly. Lots of these other things, omega fish oil, I have that, but I don't notice any difference. I've tried lots of different things. I go and take lots of tests and measure things, and that's probably my other recommendation. Try and check yourself into a trial that gives you the data back.
Yeah.
There's thousands of trials on clinicaltrials.gov. If there's one near you, there's somebody probably doing a diabetes one, and then you just get the data back. And what's
Yeah.
interesting, you look at the data and it encourages you to behave
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Your
Teaches you a lot
A1C,
about yourself. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
your A1C is
beautiful.
on the high end. So, oh, yeah, I better stop eating ice cream, right? And so but I'm like everyone else. I'm always falling off the wagon. I like chocolate cake. I like ice cream. I can kind of justify it because it makes me happy. And I think if you're miserable, you're not going to live a long time.
That's
So,
right. It's the moderation of it all. And I mean, you truly are living a life of purpose, and one of the things that I just want to highlight that you do very innately is what centenarians are known for, which is they hold such forward thinking. So they're always looking ahead. And you've been looking ahead your entire career. You are doing that big, like you said, set the goal big. right? So I call it 10xing, but I think you even
Yeah.
said like 50xing. It's like that whole quantum leap, that quantum jump. And so that's where you let yourself go. So you're looking ahead, and that already is informing your physiology that there is so much more that's waiting for you. And that is such a beautiful longevity hack just in and of itself. And so you're living testament to all of it. So I just want to thank you. I want to keep talking to you. All right. So from an educator standpoint, two last things, and we're going to wrap up. What is your favorite, or what would you recommend as your book of choice or books of choice right now for people interested in longevity?
I would recommend, I'm a runner, so I know a lot of people's expecting me to say, one of these popular books, but there's a book called The Science of Running.
Okay.
Yes, and I've read all the running books, but that book is the best one, I think, and it tells you how to optimize your running and get the best out and get faster and faster. Get Boston. I used to be a couch potato. Now I'm running Boston Marathon. So, and I feel the biggest impact is running is the most important.
Mm,
And I think the other one is probably, it's an old book, but by a popular book. Tim Ferriss wrote a book called The 4 Hour Body. It's probably like
yep.
20 years old now.
Yep.
And I think he's got a lot of tricks and tips in that.
It's a good
Uh,
one.
and that they're quite practical and pragmatic.
Exactly.
So I like that. It's quite an old book, I think, but at this point, but still, I think the
It's
first one, the
still
four
good.
hour, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, the
when it comes
four
to
hour work
basic
week.
biology and what the body needs, right? And just some best practices of I love how he talks in that book, and it really just some sound things to stabilize blood sugar, and just again very basic things that move the needle so much. So that's a good one. I love it. Great
Yeah.
recommendation.
People don't bring that up usually. It's usually one of the more modern authors, but still like that one. It's very, you
It's a
know,
good one.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
It,
solid. Well, you have and continue to leave quite a legacy. I tell you what, I am thrilled to get to continue to follow your work. So, Dr. Nag, where would people, do you want them to go to R42? Where can they find out? And again, you said there's free education
yeah,
over there and things like that. So, R42?
Yeah, r42group.com. They can Google me, Ronjon Nag. You might not be able to remember the spelling, but probably Google gets me. Stanford, Ronjon Nag, Stanford. The courses, they have cheap. They Stanford. They've quite a number of free symposiums. Like I said, me personally, I like to do the cheap ones.
Yeah,
These they do charge just a few $100s rather than thousands of dollars. So I think that's the best way. Stanford and R42 is probably the best way to figure
love
out what
it.
you're doing.
Well, we will make sure to have those links in the show notes below. Wow. Well, we're coming to the end of yet another fascinating conversation. It leaves me more hopeful for the future. I love that we are in a time that we can leverage incredible tools to help us really simplify the complexities and get clarity on the things that we can do more of and the things that we can do less of to truly show up to life with greater states of vitality and aliveness every single day. And that's in large part to you, Dr. Nag, and the work that you've done, the foundation you've laid, and also how you're helping to shape and continue to educate and inform future generations. So thank you very much again. And to all of our listeners, listen, if you want to meet and listen to amazing minds like this brilliant man, please join us as we have our 10-year anniversary this summer at RAADfest. We're going to be out in Nevada, and we are going to have such an incredible group of experts and enthusiasts alike that get to come together in community to really explore the science and the solutions to live better today for longer, more vital tomorrow. So thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, share, do all the things, continue to spread this information out there because we're all in it together and we all have the opportunity to inspire one another to know that more is possible, just like Roger Bannister. We all need to know it is possible and aging is optional, especially if we might have an aging vaccine around the corner. So keep an eye on Dr. Nag's work. And until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and go express your greatest states of aliveness. I'm Dr. Melissa. Take care. Thank you for joining us on RAADcast, where science and soul ignite the future of radical life extension. Be sure to visit us over at radfest.com. There you can engage with like minds in the super longevity movement and find out about upcoming conferences and events. If you're inspired by today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to live bigger, bolder, and longer. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time on RAADcast.